Welcome to today's lesson. We are going to look at the characteristics of living organisms. And the main objective of this unit, we believe that at the end of this lesson, you should be able to describe the 7 characteristics of living organisms. So as a start, I want you to take a minute and think of the features that you observe to be able to tell whether something is living or non-living. Just think of your environment, the things around you, and how do you tell if that thing which is around you is living or non-living. Now, as we ponder about it, I want us to recall the year 7 work. That is in key stage 3. You are introduced to this mnemonic, Mrs. GREN. And when we talk about Mrs. GREN, these letters represent the 7 characteristics of living organism, whereby M represents the concept of movement. We have R representing the concept of respiration. S, that is for sensitivity. G for growth. The next R here is for reproduction. The E here for excretion. And lastly, we have the N for nutrition. So these are the main features that we look into something to be able to tell if it is living or non-living. So living organisms have these 7 major characteristics that they exhibit or show. And once we're able to detect or see these characteristics in something, then we are going to note that that is a living organism. Let's look into the description of each of these characteristics of living organism. When we talk about movement, if you put a stone somewhere or a cup, or let's say the desk or the chair, and you leave it there, it will stay there all the time, no matter what, unless it is moved by a living organism. So we note that movement is a trait or whereby an organism changes location or position from one place to another. That is movement. For example, I can move from the chair where I'm seated now to the door to get there and close the door or open the door. Therefore, I will have displaced my body mass from one position to another. That is movement. Now, a question arises, do plants also show movement? Because plants are living organisms. So how do they show the movement? We note that the movement in plants, we look at the change of position of part of the plant, not the whole plant. For example, if I'm growing a plant in a dark place, then I have unidirectional light coming in through a hole or an opening from one direction. Then after some time, you'll see the plant bending and growing towards light. That is movement. And also that is sensitivity for plants. So you find in movement, either there's displacement of position of the whole mass of the organism, that's the whole body, or part of the body of that organism displaces it. It's displaced from position where it was and changes to another place. The second characteristic I'm going to talk about here is respiration. Once you eat food, it undergoes digestion, then absorbed into the blood. The blood transports it to the cells. And after some time, the cells are able to use up that food and get you the energy that you need to move around or carry out your daily activities. So respiration is a chemical reaction that happens in the cells to break down the nutrients and release energy. So we get our energy for the daily activities because the nutrients that we fed on are broken down in the cells through the process of oxidation, of course. Later on, we'll learn about aerobic respiration, whereby oxygen is utilized and the nutrients are oxidized to release energy. The third characteristic here is sensitivity. What do we mean when we say you're sensitive? Someone who is sensitive to matters or issues means he's readily able to detect and respond to the changes. And therefore, all living organisms, be it plants or animals, have the ability to detect and respond to the changes in their external environment. If you're out there and it starts raining, you will respond by running to a shelter. So first you detect, of course, the rain. Then two, you will respond and run to a shelter. If you touch a hot object, first you'll be able to detect, you feel the pain, the heat. Then you respond by quickly removing your hand off the hot object. Plants, consequently, are also able to detect the changes in the environment. And I just mentioned, if I'm growing a plant in a dark place and I put a small opening such that there is light coming from one direction, that plant will grow bending towards light. So it will be responding towards light. And later we shall look at the plant responses to various stimuli. A stimuli is a change in the environment. The next characteristic, we have growth. I want you to imagine my friend there, let's call him George, at the toddler stage. And now George here is an adult man. And what has happened here over time is that we have a permanent increase in body size and, of course, the dry mass of an organism. So growth is permanent in the sense that George, as you see, it is an adult. He can't go back to the way he was when he was a toddler. Yes, of course, with aging, there's shrinking of the body mass, but it cannot go back to the original state. That's why we are noting that it is a permanent increase in the size of the dry mass and body size. The next characteristic of living organism I want us to discuss, we have reproduction. Reproduction is the ability of living organisms to produce new organisms or young ones of the same kind. Animals do have reproduction through either, most of course is through sexual reproduction, and we have the offsprings produced, or they give birth to offsprings. Plants undergo reproduction, they make the seeds, and those seeds grow into new plants. So the ability of living organisms to make organisms of the same kind, or produce organisms of the same kind, that is reproduction. Then we have the sixth characteristic here, excretion, the removal of metabolic waste substances from the body. For example, we have urea, which is a waste product in our body. That urea is excreted by the kidneys. The kidneys filters the blood to remove the urea, and this urea is mixed with water and salts to make the urine. And I have to put a disclaimer here. There is a misconception that when you poo or you go for a long call, that is excretion. No, that is not excretion. That is what we refer to as egestion. You are removing the undigested material from the body. The material that have not been digested, they are removed from the body. That is egestion. And it is not excretion. Excretion, the body is removing the metabolic wastes, the waste from the chemical reactions that have been taking place in the cells. One of it is urea, which is from excess of the proteins that are broken down to urea as a waste product. That urea has to be filtered off from the blood by the kidneys. That is excretion. Then we have the seventh characteristic, that is nutrition, the ability of living organisms to take in food or utilize the sunlight energy to make food that is needed to give them energy for growth and development. And later on, we shall note that plants as producers are referred to as autotroph, or they have what we call autotrophic